I went ahead and figured I might as well get this one out of the way. I have been dreading it. Dreading what I would really discuss about Toy Story 4 story. How do you go off the rails this much? I'm honestly fascinated by the creative process that went into making this film. You had to literally try to derail the personalities and characters of the first three films to this degree. Now, apparently, after Toy Story 3, this is new information for me because I've never seen a single one of these shorts. There were a bunch of shorts, Pixar animated shorts, featuring the Toy Story gang. There was a Halloween-themed one. There was one where everybody was trapped in a box and Jessie had to overcome her fear of claustrophobia to save everybody. There were a bunch of shorts set during the time period after Andy gave everybody over to Bonnie. So Bonnie's toys and everybody, they were all in the gang in a series of shorts set after Toy Story 3, animated by Pixar during this dry spell of Toy Story. I never heard of any of them. I never watched a single one of them, but apparently some of them might be canon, but hey, it doesn't really matter. Toy Story 4 ignores pretty much most of the character growth of everybody throughout those shorts, so those shorts might as well not exist. They might as well not even be canon. Hey, the previous movies might as well not even be canon. Toy Story 2 and 3 especially. Well, 3 has to happen. Andy has to give his toys over to Bonnie, but there's so much stuff that gets ignored in Toy Story 4 that I'm baffled. I really am. I don't know how you can write these characters this off, this different. Buzz might as well be a completely different person. Jessie has barely any character. Bo might as well be a completely different person. The only one who is kind of semi-sorta on board to being his original self is Woody, until he's written to be completely different at the end of the movie. Woody is a fascinating character, and he was a character that I fell in love with from the first film. As a kid, I liked that character far more than any of the others. Buzz was also really, really cool, but Woody was that character that really stood out. He had an ego. He really did. He was pretty much his own antagonist. If you had any antagonist in the first movie, Woody was kind of like the antagonist to himself, to Buzz. Buzz was his antagonist, but Buzz wasn't the antagonist. Sid ended up being the overarching ultimate antagonist, but Woody ended up learning a very important lesson in that a child's favorite toy, their favorite toy could be temporary. Like, they might get the cool new thing, but their older thing that they're still a fan of will always be there. There will always be their favorite thing. And that's what ended up happening with Woody. Woody was the one toy that Andy hesitated getting rid of at the end of Toy Story 3, simply because that's how much of a bond he had with Woody. He probably inherited that toy from his father or something like that. We never even met and learned about Andy's father. We don't know who he is. Unless one of the shorts or something, some background third-party supplementary material that's not in a movie revealed him. I don't know. I prefer putting your stories in the movies and not in supplementary material that I have to go chasing after to find. I don't want to find these Pixar shorts and watch them. If you put every single one of them into a single release, every single short, every single one into a single DVD, and it's actually pretty decently priced, okay, I'll probably watch those, but I'm not going to chase after them. I'm not going to go onto Disney Plus. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. It's just not worth it. No, it's not. But Woody was fascinating. He was. And his personality grew in the second film. His loyalty to his kid was very powerful, but his fear of being left behind was also powerful. That's what he was afraid of in the first movie. That's why his decision to almost go with Jesse and Stinky Pete to the museum was something he actually considered, because he was actually genuinely afraid of being left behind by Andy. It's not that he abandoned Andy, he was afraid of being abandoned by Andy. So, Buzz had to go on an amazing adventure to remind Woody that there was something that Woody taught Buzz once, and he believed him. Buzz went on a big, fantastic adventure, one of the best PS1 games of all time, and got Woody back. He got him back. And that adventure continued in Toy Story 3 when Andy grew up. He was going to college, and it was an incredibly relatable experience. I grew up. I went off to post-secondary education, and I left behind most of my toys. I still have a couple of them, but most of them that I had as a kid are gone. Most of them are. I used to have this giant stuffed animal turtle, this huge pillow turtle thing. It was a great, awesome thing. I had this giant snake. I had a bunch of big dinosaur figures. There's so many toys that you have as a kid that you don't really come to appreciate until you grow up, right? That's why Toy Story 3 was also a very good sequel, because it also was a story that needed to be told. It was another stage in Andy's life, and it was another stage in Woody's life, right? So how is it that Toy Story 4 completely ignores, discards, and disrespects all of that in this? How does it do that? How can you write what was already perfectly set up for you? Probably because they didn't know what story to write. Probably because the ending to 3 was so good that there really didn't need to be a 4. That's why this exists. That's why they were written like this, because the story didn't need to be told. You could write a Pixar short about what happened to Bo, and maybe a second Pixar short of Bo being found at an antique store and Bonnie picked her up on complete happenchance and they're reunited. Fine. You know, it wasn't a big story that you needed to tell, and you didn't need to commit character assassination to all of your old characters to force a story to be told. As you can tell, it's kind of really difficult to find a starting place with Toy Story 4, which probably means this could be an hour long if I let it. I'm probably not going to let it. I don't want to let it go to over an hour, because I already did that with Final Fantasy VI. Let's just start with some characters. Woody makes the decision at the end of this movie to abandon Bonnie, simply because he thinks that Bonnie will get over him being a lost toy, that he seemingly can't take not being the favorite toy anymore, and that he's going to go live as a lost toy with Bo, who's also a lost toy, despite her lamp being in an antique store across the street, but apparently this circus festival fairground thing is going to be moving, even though she's been here for 7 years. But the short with her moving around doesn't timeline add up. nothing adds up. I don't think the people who wrote this even watched the shorts, so hey, I'm gonna ignore them. Because I didn't watch them either. I just heard about them because I watched one of the best Toy Story 4 breakdowns in the history of breakdowns that covers pretty much absolutely every single possible angle of this movie that you could possibly cover from a genuine and true fan. You could find it on YouTube. It's about 3 to 4 to 6 hours long, though, so you're gonna be strapped in for a while, because this guy, he goes into it. I don't want to do that because I don't need to. That guy already did. So if you want the best Toy Story 4 breakdown, you have 6 hours to burn, you can watch that one. But I'm going to try to keep this one under 1 hour, so if you don't want 6 hours to burn, this is your good news. So why would Woody ever make this decision? It's because somebody watched the first movie when they were like a child and never watched it again. And they probably heard about what happened in the third movie. They probably didn't even watch it though, so... And they just think that Woody's gonna just abandon Bonnie simply because he hasn't been played with for 3 or 4 times in a span of a week. And that he's no longer the favorite character, even though the third movie's ending kind of lies about that. Though they try to make the argument that a child is finicky and their favorite toy can change at the blink of an eye. And, you know, from the writer who was probably in his 40s to 50s, I'm closer to my childhood than they are. So my memories of my childhood are a little bit fresher than that. So let me see if I can look back into my mind and look back on my favorite toys and try to see if I ever abandoned them. Nope, still got them. And didn't abandon them. Easy. Look at that. There's a Vegeta. This is like, I don't know if it's a misprint or what. Look at it. All the plastic is very loose. The limbs are still loose. This has been a heavily played with toy. Look at the paint. It's scrapped and all that stuff. But take a look at the armor. This is his Namek Saga armor. This is Namek Saga. And it's Super Saiyan Vegeta. They were making What If toys, probably by mistake or who knows. But Jakks Pacific was making What If figures even way back then. This is an official licensed product, right? This is a Jakks Pacific line toy. And this is what you get. This is Namek Saga Super Saiyan Vegeta. I've even got one of Bardock with the off-color armor. And Bardock's still here too, and he's in pretty good condition, all things considered. But look at that faded armor plate. This is an actual, the armor didn't fade over time or get bleached over time. This is actually how he looked out of the box. The armor is off color, and this is officially licensed Jakks Pacific. It's literally on his shoe, on the bottom of his shoe, licensed by Funimation. Jakks China, 2003. This is 22 years old. I was 10, maybe? I don't know. But it was a while ago. It was a very long time ago. And I still have them. I have most of these guys. But I lost a lot of my old childhood toys, but I kept, obviously, my favorites, like Andy was going to keep Woody. So why do I bring that up? Well, it's to give a perspective of a child in regards to having a brand new toy added into a series line of toys, and if a favorite toy that you get brought into your group of toys, if that favorite toy ends up replacing the other toy or whatever, maybe they were trying to try to make a nod to the first movie. How Buzz came into the picture, and Buzz was temporarily the favorite because Andy was big into space movies at the time, and then he went back to Woody being his favorite. Maybe they're trying to equate that to Woody here, in that when Bonnie found Woody, she made him the favorite for a little while, but then went back to her old favorite toy. And that I could see, but it doesn't look like that was actually the point that they were trying to make. I'm actually trying to fill in a gap in the story with my own idea here, and this idea would actually be a pretty good one because it's nodding back to the first movie. That would have been a good idea, but it's inferred. You have to infer it because it doesn't actually tell you. A lot of this stuff is inference to try to fix the problems that the movie has made. And then this movie makes the mistake of changing Bo and trying to trick you by the opening scene in the movie taking place sometime after Toy Story 2 when Andy was still a child. And Buzz, Woody, and Bo end up saving RC from rain. Andy was out playing in the rain and he left RC out in the rain, and RC fell into a drain ditch and was at risk of being lost forever. So Woody, Buzz, and Bo and Slink all got together to try to rescue the toy and bring him back and all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in that scene. And again, this other YouTuber that I mentioned broke down this scene for about 30 minutes to an hour, so I don't need to break that down if you ever plan to watch that video. I recommend it. I definitely do. I forgot their name. I'm sorry, but you can easily look it up. The actual review, that is. But this scene, I'm not going to break down how many consistency errors it has. I'm just going to point out that Bo, right off the bat, is animated completely differently. And personality-wise, she is completely different from the first two movies. I made the decision to watch all 4 of these movies back to back so that I can have the most fresh look and the most fresh perspective on Toy Story 4 when I watched it. I don't know if everybody does this when they watch a sequel. They go back and watch the previous ones to refresh their memory, or they just go directly into a sequel. Usually when I get a sequel, I tend to watch the original one first and just go in sequential order. I used to do that with MCU until the MCU got way too friggin' massive to do that with. There's like 30 movies now, so I'm not going to watch 30 movies just to watch the 31st. I may watch a couple and then watch the next one, like with Deadpool. I watched Deadpool 1 and 2 and then got into Deadpool and Wolverine, but I didn't. I decided not to. I decided, but there's not too many movies in the Toy Story franchise. There's only 4. So I decided to rewatch the first 3, and I loved every minute of it. They were very fantastic movies. I have some problems with 3, but not a lot. It's a very good movie. And then watched 4. And the gap in time really shows. Like, the animation is top tier. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's beautiful. This is a beautiful movie. The animators at Pixar are underpaid. They are incredibly talented. They are incredibly good at what they do. Toy Story looks like Toy Story. The toys feel, well, not all of them. Bo is a porcelain doll. She's made of porcelain, right? And she's used in this movie like she's made of plastic, like she's an action figure like Buzz. She's not an action figure. She's porcelain. She is porcelain. And that is very breakable. Very, very breakable. It is so incredibly breakable. Like wow, so breakable. If Bo ever fell off that shelf that her lamp was on, she'd be in a million pieces. That's how breakable porcelain is. And she gets away with a lot of stuff because they need her to. Instead of deciding to leave Bo as she used to be. But then if they left Bo as she used to be, They couldn't make the character that they wanted Bo to be without making a new character, which ironically I would have actually preferred. I would have preferred they made a new character. The idea behind Bo is good. The idea behind this character is good, but it's not Bo. It's not her. This isn't this character. This is somebody else. This is another toy. A completely different character has replaced Bo Peep. And they're trying to mask that by putting Bo Peep on here and naming her Bo Peep and saying, hey, remember this is Bo. No, it's not. I've just watched 1 and 2. I've just watched them. This isn't her. It isn't. No, it's not. But they try to make you think that it's her. They try very hard to make you equate it to her through nostalgia, but it's just not working. It just doesn't work. And this isn't a bash at this character. This isn't a bash at the strength of character. No. It's that I like consistency of character. I like consistency of character. You don't need to retroactively change Bo to make this character 7, 8, 10 years later act the way she does. You do not need to do that. You could write Bo consistently the way she used to be written in 1 and 2, have her reunite with Woody and Buzz, that's fine, and then make a new character to do everything that she's doing. That would have been fine. I would have had no problems with that. I wouldn't have any. Jesse would have a great position here. What if Jesse was given to Hannah? I think her name is Hannah. No, not Hannah. Hannah's Sid's sister's name. I forget what Andy's sister's name is. Molly. What if Jesse was given to Molly, and it was Jesse that was sold off, along with Bo, and Woody ends up finding Jessie after all these years, and this is how she acts. This would make sense for Jessie to do this type of stuff, to have given Andy a chance, but then Molly got rid of her, and it reconfirmed for her that being a kid's toy doesn't work for her. That would have been fine. I would have been okay with that. Making this Jessie instead of Bo, that would have been fine. Really, I would have had no problems with it. If Bo was still on display in the antique store and Woody goes into that, then Buzz goes and finds Jessie, and they continue that relationship there, and you keep Buzz's personality intact and not destroy it, which we're going to get to that one soon. You could have had both Woody and Buzz decide to become lost toys, even though it's kind of against their character personalities, but at least it would work a little bit better that Woody and Buzz are together like that, because that's their team, and they would not separate like that. If Woody ever became lost, Buzz would become lost with him. If Woody was ever in the furnace, getting ready to die, Buzz would jump out from safety to help him out. Because that's just who they are. That's who they are. I watched the third movie. Woody was trying to rescue Lotso, the bear, the villain of the movie, because he believes in second chances. Woody is one of those second chance kind of guys, and he's trying to save Lotso from being thrown into the furnace. Buzz is already in safety. He's already gotten himself to safety, and he immediately, without even thinking about it, jumps down to help Woody free Lotso. He doesn't even think about it, because that's within his character to do this. Buzz would do this immediately to help Woody out, to help any of Andy's toy family of friends and all that stuff. This is a family of toys. It really is. And of the family of toys, if any of them were to separate from the rest, if Woody was ever going to do that, Buzz would have to go with him. That's just obvious. It's just that's what has to happen, is that Buzz would go with him. But they don't. They separate at the end of this movie, and it completely destroys both of their characters, because this is a decision that they would never have made. They never would have made that decision. The writers had to forcibly force this in so that these characters act against their personalities, against their histories, so that the story that the writer wants to tell can be told instead of the writer going, this may not work with these characters. I may need to go back to the drawing board and reanalyze this. This would be like if I wrote a story where Setchel decided to become a barber. That goes completely against Setchel's character. He would never become a barber, like never in a million years. I mean, he's a good swordsman, but he would never just give up his traveling ways and just settle down and become a barber. He would never do that. But if I decided to be lazy and force that in, I certainly could force him to become a barber, but it wouldn't make sense to his character. It wouldn't make sense. And I'm thinking about that as a writer. I'm thinking about that as a storyteller. And these changes to these characters just don't work. They don't work. Especially after rewatching all three of the previous films back to back, and then coming into this with the most freshest take of all previous films, which is what I think everybody working on the sequel needs to do. They need to watch the first one to get the freshest perspective of how these characters were written. They need to get in contact with the previous story writer, the scenario writer. They need to contact the creators. They need to get in contact to talk about these things and get correspondence together and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this with this character. Would this make sense with this character? And the old writer says, you know what, that probably won't work, but maybe if you try this and do this a little bit differently, maybe we can make that sneak in. You see, that's the type of thing that they needed to have done, but I don't think they did that. I don't think they did. That's why this movie has so many problems. It's a beautiful movie to look at, but they destroyed 3 characters, 2 of which are beloved characters, one of which was admittedly a background character and had the most room to make a new story with, but this wasn't the story to make that character story with. And speaking of Jessie, she had a huge role in the second and third movies. What does she do in Toy Story 4? Do they even continue Buzz and Jessie's budding romantic relationship that started in 3? No, they don't even bring it up. That doesn't even get brought up. It's all about Woody and Bo, but they have no chemistry either. They have absolutely no chemistry. You could see the chemistry in 1 and 2 with Bo and Woody. You definitely could see that. And you don't see it in 4. It's not there. It's very forced character connection, and it doesn't work. Maybe I'm overanalyzing this. Maybe I am, but I cherish this franchise. Toy Story 2 is my favorite Pixar movie. It's my favorite Disney video game. It's very close to me. But Toy Story 3 hit me at just the right time when I was growing up and getting rid of all of my old toys, so it really hit me in the deep feels too. Toy Story 4 feels like a betrayal to those fans of these characters. It feels like a betrayal. It feels like the writer did not give the writer or writers, the team, did not give the time and respect to these characters to really consider the past and how they would be able to move forward with a new story. Maybe they were on a time crunch. I can be understanding. I really can be about that. Time crunches suck. They do. They absolutely suck all of the creative juices out of somebody. When you're on a time crunch, you're rushed. And when you're rushed, things get sloppy. So, if they were on a time crunch, and this is just a sequel that was made to be a cash grab, and the creativity was completely absent, I can understand that. I really can understand that. I wouldn't like it, but I can understand that it was a decision made by somebody in a higher position than the people who worked on this. And I can understand it, and I can accept it. I wouldn't like it, but I would accept it. But I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I don't know what happened behind the scenes with all these characters, but there are some commentary. You can play this film back with the audio commentary. The previous 3 films have commentary. I may actually watch the commentary track eventually and just get to see how the creators talked about the previous movies and how they felt about the previous movies and the narrative, and then listen to the narrative of this one. Like I said, I keep bringing up this previous YouTuber. This guy actually did watch the commentary for Toy Story 4 and Toy Story 3, 2, 1, and found all of the discrepancies and errors and plot and disrespect to the previous characters that happens in this 4th movie. So hey, let's get to Buzz next. There is this. They try to do something that they're trying to make it funny. They're trying to do something with Buzz to try to make it seem and sound funny. Woody talks about having a conscience. He talks about having a conscience, and that this conscience tells him that he needs to do something to help this guy out. And Buzz doesn't know what a conscience is. He doesn't know what a voice inside your head is. And so he presses a button on his chest, and his voice box sounds off. And Buzz seems to think that's his conscience. So he decides for the rest of the movie to make all decision-making come from pressing a button on his chest, when that is a severe insult to his intelligence. He's not just some himbo thug, okay? Buzz isn't just some himbo thug. If you watched the first movie, he's incredibly intelligent. He knows what things are. He knows what technology is. He knows how to even drive a car. He knows how to drive the truck, And, but in the second movie, he understands he's a toy, but he still has that savvy of the world. He still has that savvy of solving mysteries and connecting the dots. He looks at a license plate on a car, and he's able to determine, based off the custom license plate, where that car comes from, and that it was Al from Al's Toy Barn. Buzz makes all of these connections by himself, and is able to use that decision-making and problem-solving to find Woody. Against all odds, he finds him. He gets right to Al's penthouse and finds him. That's incredible. In this big city, as a toy, he was able to do that after just a couple days. It's awesome. Amazing. Fantastic. Very coincidental, but fantastic, too. In this, the 4th movie, making him demoted to this himbo, thug, brain-dead thing that they did with him is an insult to his character. It's essentially character assassination. He will never be as interesting as he was in the first 3 films in this movie. He's just there because everybody likes Buzz, so they have to do something with him. That just feels like that was his character. Is that somebody told the writers, Buzz is a very popular character. You can't make Toy Story 4 without doing something with him. So they just came up with something off the spot without really analyzing his character, paying attention to his character, and just forced something in so that all the kids can go button push. But they're not that dumb. Kids are not that dumb. I used to be one of them. I was very, very intelligent. They're not dumb. Okay? This feels like an insult to kids. It really does. Especially if they were fans of the first 3 movies, They'll watch this movie, and they might be happy that Woody gets to be Bo at the end, but Buzz, they'll go like, what's going on with Buzz? Why is he acting this stupid? And it's character assassination through and through. It makes me sad. It really does. Because this movie really didn't want to use the previous toys from Andy's bedroom. The Potato Heads, Rex, Ham, Slinky. They didn't use them at all, really. Jessie has one thing to do because somebody probably reminded them that Jessie was also a very popular character and that they probably should use her to do something. But if I was going to tell you how to do a sequel, it's been like more than almost over 10 years since the previous movie. How would you do this sequel? If I was going to tell you how to do it, I would tell you that Toy Story 3 would be how you did it after such a big time gap. And they did that movie very well. They were very thoughtful and considerate to the characters. And John Lasseter was still there at the company, so he was there from the first movie. So he was there to give creative input on something. So that was important. We're missing John Lasseter here in this fourth movie, so we don't get to have his input on character course correction and story course correction. I don't know who else was remaining at Pixar from the old days to give course correction. So I don't know if anybody was able to have oversight for this movie. Either way, it just feels like a cash grab that was forced to do something just because the sequels to Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and even a bit of like Monsters University, which I don't really care for, but I loved Monsters Inc., the first one. But those sequels are doing pretty well. Cars 2 was doing pretty well. So they thought, let's make Toy Story 4. It's going to be very easy. And that just feels with it. That's just what this feels like. It's like they wanted to do something that was very easy without doing too much thought. But they picked the wrong IP to do that with, because if you're going to make a Toy Story sequel, you have to give it thought. You have to think about it. You have to give it enough thought and respect and dedication that the people who made 2 and 3 did. That thought, dedication, and respect to these characters did not exist in this movie. They forced a narrative, they changed personalities, and they disappointed a generation of fans that they created, basically. The generation of fans that launched their company. A generation of fans that started everything. Toy Story took them out into space. And this sent them crashing down to Earth below.